I'm really excited to come into your space wherever you are today. And I pray that as we chop it up today, I have a special guest with us today. We're going to chop it up a little bit, just having a conversation to kind of reach out and help it, not necessarily change the narrative, but help begin to enlighten us on the need to change the narrative. And so I have with me today a longtime friend of our families, friend of mine, Terrence Ray. Terrence Ray, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Pastor.
Good.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, this is an exciting time. I heard you say a little earlier that this was something that you envisioned doing some time ago, you and Paul. Tell me about that vision that you had for.
It was a conversation, a good friend of mine, you know as well, Paul Gordon and I, we had talked about tapping into technology and figuring out a way where we could actually take advantage of the multiple platforms that existed. And, you know, I was telling my daughter recently that my tech game is whack, and I didn't know how I was going to get to do that. And just, I mean, it's a blessing to be here and be able to take my first kick at the cat, if you will, right, and be a part of this particular platform and have a conversation with you about whatever we feel like talking about.
Right,
I'm excited. I'm really excited. Well,
listen, the times definitely have changed. I remember prior to pre-COVID that, you know, technology was out there and it was rapidly changing, but many of us didn't tap into it. And so now that we have COVID, it's a necessity now to tap into it, and not just tap into it because that's your audience now. We have to have it at a level that they can not only consume, but they feel like it's worth their time.
It's mandatory that you begin to at least test it out and see where you are with it. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity today to, try my wings out.
All right. Well, we want to chop it up today. We want to chop it up. We got a lot of things going on in the world today. We have the pandemic that's going on. We have this election, which is crazy. We're not going to even get into that right now. It's just crazy. I've never been so bombarded with mail and phone call and text, and so it's just a crazy season. But more importantly, we want to chop it up looking at the plight of the African-American male. You know, and I know that men and fathers in general have their challenges because, you know, our society seems to be more pro-female, and I'm not against females or anything like that. We have many leaders I have around me, so don't write me no letters. You know, I'm not female bashing. I'm just saying that there's a great need that it almost seems like the African-American male is losing his way, you know. And so I'm trying to begin to have a conversation about, you know, how do we really rise up from the ashes here, you know? And so let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I know you are a part of a major fatherhood piece that has been happening for the last century or so here in Milwaukee. And I ain't trying to date you or nothing, you know?
But, I think this gray dude that does a little bit of that, man.
But it was a major move. We just had the Fatherhood Summit. The mayor was on, and you always chopping it up as far as the plight of the fatherhood. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, piggybacking on the fatherhood thing, my name is Terrence Ray.
All right.
I am the proud father of two incredible daughters, Imani and Shamani Ray. I am a product of Paterson, New Jersey. And I've been a community advocate here in Milwaukee for over 25 years. And I cut my community advocate's teeth on serving in the offices of three prominent Democratic legislators here in Milwaukee. So for 20 years, I did constituent services and worked in Madison for three legislators. So I've been on the landscape for a long time, man.
Okay.
And it was actually out of the birth of my daughters. It was real organic. My involvement in the fatherhood community here in Milwaukee was real organic because after my daughters were born, there was just I can't even describe it. There was just a thing in me, if you will, that made me want to be a better father, be a better father than my father was, and then share that passion with every man that I came across.
Okay.
Man.
Now, looking at that, I know you had said, or I heard you say, and I heard the mayor say it as well, that through your fatherhood initiative, you all have reached over 10,000 men.
Yeah. When every time I think about that, it's like, wow. I mean, and the ability to be able to do that was like, I thought about the movie, actually, Field of Dreams. You know, there's a saying in the movie, if you build it, they'll come. And we created an environment where men who typically don't have that venue to vent and talk about things that are bothering them, we created an environment where men could feel comfortable coming and getting some things off their chest. And over the course of the 9 years that I was blessed to serve as the first executive director of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, it was over 10,000 men that we made feel comfortable enough to come and ask for some help.
Okay. But and now we live in another time. I think now things have shifted, and I believe now the Field of Dreams, build it and they will come, is not pertinent or relevant to where we are now, in that the African American male feels disconnected from the resources, disconnected from the authority, disconnected from access to really what fulfills us. When we think about what happened growing up, the man was the breadwinner, the mother stayed home, single moms had to work. We do understand that. As times began to move, then it took two incomes for a household and not one. And then as time kept moving, it took more than two incomes. It's not unusual for a parent to have more than one job. And then as the time continued to go forth, the mothers or the females will get more education, and then they will get the promotions. And slowly but surely, it seemed like the men has been left on the street corners. And now, when you look in just about any setting, it's like where's Waldo?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
When you look in just about any setting where resources are, or where policy is being made, or where the things that make things happen, you don't really see the black man present as you used to see before. And so what do you say to the African American male in today's world, that we still have resources available, but how do we get them to come and tap into them?
I think you gotta reach them where they are. And now, as you mentioned, with technology being the way it is, you have to sit down and really think about where they are. And right now, with respect to technology, everybody has a cell phone.
Okay.
And you got to figure out a way to tap into that instrument there, and make the resources available, or at least be in a position to be able to begin the discussion to let them know that there are resources out there.
Okay. Now you think about the climate that we live in now, and unfortunately, it seemed like things were hidden in the closet. And now things are out of the closet, because the whole systemic racism, that's not something new, but it's new to the newer generations,
Right.
And when we think about with the Black Lives Matters, black men being lynched or, killed, police coming up back in the initial origination of police, it was for those kind of reasons, even though it had broadened now. And of course, we don't say that every police is bad. We know that, and we know at the end, and I do kind of understand the defunding of the police, in that using some resources so the community can help police themselves, but I don't think that's the message that's going out. It's going out as though we're cutting the police out, and the African-American males seem to be taking on that particular attitude, not realizing if we have trouble, that's who we're going to call.
Right, exactly. The message has been convoluted, man, and I guess it depends on who's delivering the message. When you talk about defunding, or the message has gone from defunding the police to eliminating the police. And I don't think in any civilized society that you're going to talk about the complete elimination of law enforcement. But now we're talking, and again, like with the Colin Kaepernick thing, it devolved, if you will, from him kneeling on one knee protesting police brutality to now he's disrespecting the flag. You know, it went from, depending on who's delivering the message, you know, and that's why it's important. You mentioned earlier about changing the narrative. You know, you got to have some role in defining, describing, and even writing the narrative, man, for different populations. And for our particular population of black men, I think we need to be at the forefront and directly involved in writing whatever the narrative is. Because as we began talking earlier, we talked about this particular place, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And since I've been in the public arena, if you will, this particular city, Milwaukee, has been labeled as the worst place in America for black men, you know, over almost 25 years. You know, and how do you maintain a distinction like that? And, you know, and to me, it goes back to the whole conversation about Black Lives Matter. You know, the difference between all lives matter and Black Lives Matter. In my opinion, you know, until you understand and appreciate the fact that all lives, I mean, black lives do in fact matter, all lives can matter. You know, when you look at something like, an example like Milwaukee has been identified as the worst place in America for over 20 plus years for black men, you know, I think there's something wrong with that particular narrative.
And so when you think about that, the attitude of the African-American male is that they're conscious of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
exactly.
they, in some sense, feel that they're not being heard. So when you talk about coming to the table or being involved in changing that narrative, when they don't feel that they're being heard, they have a disinterest to pursue that lane. And that's why I think when you have these blow-ups, when lately with the police, you know, with the killings, unnecessary, unjustified killings, that they start burning, and that's like their outlet, even though we do know that there are some accelerants in there where some outside forces that's, you know, aggravating or instigating that type of behavior. With that being said, it doesn't mean that inside is not bubbling over like that and they looking for that outlet. And so how can we, when we talk about mentoring men or even fathers, I was talking with my son this morning, friend of his, 22 years old, I believe. I was going to reach out to Paul concerning him. Some kind of way got involved in some type of armed robbery or something, and now he's in prison. And 23 years old, 23, 24 years old. And when you think about, that's a regular occurrence, you know, not necessarily armed robbery, but our young black males ending up in the system. And so having a mentor or model, some way of mentoring like you did with your fathers, when you talk about your fatherhood and impacting 10,000 lives, and that multiplies from there. You know, you initially have your 10,000, but then the lives that they're touched, the women that's in their lives, the children that's in their lives, as a result of them being better, you know what I mean, that's a domino effect.
Right.
So now when we talk about the young African-American male that gets caught up in the system or caught up with looking at other ways to get there quicker, if you will, versus coming through and, you know, paying the dues and going through, you know, the things that you have to get through, how do we begin to reach out to try to change the narrative and what's happening there?
You mentioned being heard. I think it doesn't matter what color you are, man. Everybody wants to be heard or feel that, you know, what they're saying is being listened to. And that was one of the things that when we established the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, it was imperative for us to make sure that the men, the so-called impacted population, if you would, they played a role in the establishment of the organization. How can you provide services for people if you don't have the very people who the services are provided for at the table, telling you what they need, you know, and have it be bottom up instead of top down.
Yes.
You know, and if they're at the table and if they feel a part of the establishment of whatever services or organization that they're going to be serving them, it makes a huge difference, man. That's like me sitting up telling somebody what I think he needs, as opposed to me listening to that person, asking him, you know. And that was one of the major things that we did. We went out in the community and asked men, you know, how would you design a fatherhood program? What do you think needs to be involved in the program that's going to be providing services for fathers? You tell us. We did focus groups, and it was real, not only interesting, but it was real humbling to sit and listen to men say, this is what we need.
Yeah.
And then move forward on it and creating that environment. One of the, when we would do, as we put the annual summit, the annual fatherhood summit together, there were two areas that really, really touched my heart in the development of those events. We had a workshop called Baby Mama Drama. And I mean, I remember we had to actually have it twice, because the interest in it had guys hanging out the door, man, to get in, just to vent, to be able to, and then to hear that they weren't the only one going through this problem, man. And the other thing was the celebration that we did for grandfathers too. That was just impactful, man. We had families bring, or at least begin by writing a letter explaining why their grandfathers should be recognized, and then it would culminate with a ceremony recognizing grandfathers, and the families would bring their grandfathers in there. They'd be casket sharp, man, coming to celebrate their grandfathers, and just that recognition. If you based on where we started at, you look at young black men and how they feel like no one's paying attention, and then you go across generations and look at grandfathers. It's like, wow, from the cradle to the grave, man, it's like nobody's paying attention to them. And then now with COVID, one of the things we paid attention to was, you know, how, or before COVID, when older men would go hang out in McDonald's, because we use McDonald's as a vehicle to tell grandfathers about the event. But now with, you know, McDonald's and every other eating establishment being closed, it's like grandfathers have pretty much gone back underground again, man. And that's like tapping, Paul used to call them libraries, man, you know, and tapping into the wealth of knowledge and making them feel like they're being relevant again.
Okay. So we got about 5 minutes left. When we think about solutions or pointing people, because we talked about a gamut of different things, and of course we know we don't have all the solutions, and so even with some of the things we've raised, for many is obvious because you can see them. But ending on the fatherhood note, as you talked about the fatherhood and the grandfathers and the things that you all were able to do, I have two sons, a 27-year-old and a 24-year-old. I think I got that right.
You better get it right.
And I have a 2-year-old granddaughter and a 3-month-old granddaughter.
Okay.
And so them as young fathers, now I know I've tried to be the best father I could be. And oftentimes, as you said, when you was 15, and I don't know what the threshold is, but at that age where you don't necessarily listen to nobody else,
right.
And especially your father, you know, in some respect, not saying my children are wayward in any of those things, but I'm saying it's a demographic out there of fathers who are young that may have a father at home, may not have a father at home, that's out there trying to make it work. What resources or where can we point them at to, you know, if they're listening out on our broadcast today, where can we point them, you know, based on some of the information that you already know as far as resources or different, you know, fatherhood sources that's out there?
There are myriad, and I always used to say Milwaukee is resource rich. You know, there are myriad resources out there, but with the pandemic, it's challenging right now. Everybody's doing a restart. The restart button has been pushed, and the whole community is pivoting and trying to figure out a way to provide the services, provide the physical services that we're actually challenged to provide right now. It's kind of challenging to provide physical services right now. But I think with technology, it's important to be able to just communicate right now. It's important to pick up the phone and just check on people right now because of our inability to go into resource places and get direct services right now. So I think that the best thing to do is take advantage of the technology that exists and connect people with fathers, if you will, or influential men, or men, not necessarily influential men that you know are just good and grounded men. That's sort of like me sitting here talking to you, man. It's good to be able to do this right now because of what we're going through socially, man.
So just to clarify, to make sure that that they can grab it and run with it, if you will, making it portable. You're saying that for the father or even the African-American male, because we do know that because of COVID, people are finding out how much they don't like each other. Right. And, being locked in the house, things of that sort. Now, it is possible for a person to not like each other but love each other. Yes. Now, that's another segment. We ain't going to go into that, but that is possible.
Yes. I agree.
That a person can love another person but not like them, and so there's a lot of frustration levels now. You got your children at home. You got one in one room on Zoom, the other one in the other room on Zoom. Right. You got the daycares, you got the little baby. My wife teaches, and she had all type of situations that she's seen on Zoom. And so you got that element at home. Then you got the one who had lost their job. You got the pressures of financially what that brings to a house. And so now you got these households, especially if you're not a seasoned person, where you're able to have that patience and hang in there. You can be prone to blow up in those situations.
For sure. Yeah.
And so being able to say, number one, not necessarily in this order, you're saying that they need to pick up the phone and call somebody they know that's grounded and just sit down like we're sitting down and chopping it up.
Exactly.
Exactly. And for the person who they are calling, we need to not try to answer or provide the solution to their problem, be their deliverer, but to listen.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've had this conversation countless times since COVID. Everybody's moving around trying to figure out what's going on during this pandemic. And at the end of the day, I've concluded, and this is just a personal conclusion of mine, I mean, it's like nobody really knows what's going on, man. It's going to take some time for us to settle into our new normal.
Okay.
And I think, you still tap into the pre-COVID spaces, if you will. Okay. I do know the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative is still around. You can contact the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. I know Al Holmes over at My Father's House still exists. You have to reach out to the places that existed, but it's just a challenging time for everybody right now. Okay. And for me, being able to have a space, quite frankly, like Jericho, or have access to a space like Jericho is, that's a plus. I mean, a plus. And to be able to, we may have to go to a time where we're back at the church again, if you will. Okay. But nobody really knows what's going on, man. And I don't want to sit here and pretend I got all the answers either.
And we both don't want that, because we don't. but we do know what we know.
Right.
You know, I was in a meeting once with some people. Now, I've been pastoring the church for 27 years, and a lot of them guys was younger, you know, 2 or 3 years into it, and they was like doing all the talking.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'll be listening, and I'll be like, okay, you know, I ain't trying to act like I know everything, but there are some things that I do know.
Exactly.
You know, some things that I've learned.
Right.
And in contrast to what's being said, if it's not right, it's just not right.
There
So
you go.
look into the camera there, and tell the people, if the one that's out there, you said that the fatherhood initiative still exists.
Yes.
And so secondly, you said not only reach out to somebody that they could talk to, you said reach out to the fatherhood or organizations that provide for them.
Yes.
And then thirdly, as we get ready to close, look into the camera. You talking to a young brother who's struggling with, you know, maintaining his sanity, maintaining his space. You know, if they're working any job nowadays, most jobs work you to get everything they can get out of you, and you know you got this situation. How could you encourage them to continue on and to not give up, give in, or to give out?
Well, the first thing I tell them to do is let them know that they're not alone. Let the young man know that he's not alone. And again, I'm old school, so initially I was thinking about go to the yellow pages and look, but it's like really use your phone and take a chance and look up resources for fathers, and you'll get a list of things and just reach out. Or even in addition to that, there's somebody in your neighborhood. There are other men in your neighborhood. Sometimes it's just good to talk to some people that are right there around you in plain view. You'll be surprised. A lot of fathers are just chomping at the bit, waiting to give another young man some advice. Sometimes the answer is right there in front of you, Okay.
All right. Well, listen, thank you all so much for tuning in to our Man2Man, Man2Man, chopping it up with Terrence Ray. And so our takeaways of today, number one, you can make sure that you reach out to somebody. Reach out to somebody who has wisdom, who's walking in the wisdom, who's walking the talk, because somebody always can say something. Everybody have something to say, and so you have to make sure that they're walking the walk. You don't want to listen to somebody who's jacked up trying to tell you how to be straight. So make sure you qualify it, that they're walking the walk. So if you know an older man that has the evidence in their life that they're walking this thing out, then reach out to them and be willing to listen to them. You don't have to do everything that they say, but take it and fit it into your mold or whatever, and be able to walk it out, because they can bring something to the table. You don't have to figure it out on your own. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The second thing is Google is your friend. Yeah. He said, Google fatherhood resources.
Yes.
Google fatherhood resources and take a chance. I heard him say, take a chance. And I know that sometimes it's hard. I teach people all the time, you need 4 relationships. You need a mentor, a model, a partner, and friend. And those relationships is not easily come by. Right. And oftentimes when people start down the journey to establish those relationships, they get disappointed or discouraged because, the person who they thought was the person is not the person. But listen, it's worth the pursuit. It's worth the pursuit. Anything worth having is worth pursuing, okay? And then the third thing, he encourages us as men to make sure now that we are tapping into the resources. He says sometimes it's people right around us. And so it is a relational thing, and it's worth it. I'm telling you that it's worth it. I thank God for the relationships that I have, and during this particular season, I've been all over the place. I got a lot of things on my plate, and I'm not taking advantage of them as much. I told my wife that, we're going to have to get out of here some kind of way. We ain't been nowhere in 9 months, and, this thing, we're going to rent a mobile home and get out of here and so. But listen, I pray that helped you, that blessed you today. and that you will just walk that thing out. Listen, you're not alone. There's somebody going through or been through what you're going through. And listen, we want to begin to try to, over time, Terrence, Ray, and I, we're working on some different things. We're partnered. He's a part of several organizations. He heads up RGM. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And so we're working on some resources that we can bring. I've learned something in the meeting we had the other day on trauma, and so we're working on some things that we could bring to try to help change the narrative in the landscape in Milwaukee and try to flip this script, all right? And so listen, that's all we have time for today. Thank you again for tuning in. I pray that it's been a blessing. I'll be looking forward to some things that we got coming up in the future as we continue to be man-to-man, chopping it up, with Dr. A.D. Burns. I just made that one up. Listen, thank you all. Have a great rest of your week, and be productive and stay focused.